The day my husband called me Barren for the last time, he did not lower his voice. He wanted everyone in the restaurant to hear. The waiter froze beside our table. A little girl stopped eating her ice cream. Even the pianist missed a note. Some women are born to become mothers, Ethan said as he leaned back in his chair. Others are just empty. Then he looked directly at me. And unfortunately, I married one of them. A few people looked away in embarrassment. Others stared. I wanted to disappear. Not because his words were new. After 12 years of marriage, I had heard every version of them. Broken. Useless. Incomplete. A disappointment. But that afternoon was different. Because earlier that morning, I had finally made a decision. I wasn't going to spend the rest of my life begging someone to see my worth. I quietly folded the napkin onto the table. I'm going home, I said. Ethan laughed. To do what? Cry? I looked at him for a long moment. No. Then I smiled for the first time in months. I'm going home to start living. I turned and walked away. I didn't know it then. But exactly 2 years later the same man would stand frozen in the middle of his second wedding watching me walk and holding the hands of our twins. My name is Amelia Brooks. When I married Ethan Carter, I believed love could survive anything. He wasn't rich. Neither was I. We met while working at a small publishing company downtown. He was funny, confident, charming in a way that made every room feel lighter. When he proposed after 2 years of dating, I didn't hesitate. We rented a tiny apartment with cracked kitchen tiles and windows that whistled every winter. We didn't have much, but we had dreams. Or at least I thought we did. The first year was beautiful. We traveled whenever we could, cooked together, stayed awake talking until sunrise. We planned names for children we hoped to have one day. A little girl named Lily. A little boy named Noah. Back then neither of us imagined those conversations would eventually become weapons. After 2 years of trying for a baby, nothing happened. Friends who had married after us already had children. Baby showers became torture. Every smiling family photograph felt like another reminder of what we didn't have. Still we kept trying. Doctors, tests, supplements, special diets, everything. Whenever results came back normal, Ethan would sigh impatiently. There has to be something wrong. I believed he meant with both of us. I was wrong. One evening, after another appointment, he tossed the medical papers onto the kitchen counter. They probably missed something. The doctor said we're both healthy. They're wrong. I smiled weakly. We still have time. He didn't answer. That silence became familiar. Months turned into years. The silence slowly transformed into blame. Whenever someone announced a pregnancy, Ethan became distant. Whenever his mother visited, things became worse. Margaret Carter had never liked me. She had accepted me only because Ethan insisted. But once grandchildren failed to appear, she stopped pretending. At family dinners she would smile politely before saying things like, "My neighbor's son already has 3 children." Or "Some women simply aren't meant for motherhood." Then she would glance directly at me. Always smiling. Always kind enough that no one else could accuse her of cruelty. But I understood every word. One Christmas she handed Ethan a tiny wrapped box. Inside was a baby bib. Everyone laughed awkwardly. Margaret placed her hand over mine. "I bought it years ago." She squeezed gently. "I suppose I'll have to keep waiting." The room fell silent. I excused myself and locked myself in the upstairs bathroom. I sat on the floor and cried until my eyes burned. Ethan never came to check on me. Later that night, while driving home, he kept his eyes on the road. "You embarrassed my mother." I stared at him. "I embarrassed her? You made things awkward." I couldn't breathe. "You overreact." That was the first night I realized. My husband no longer saw my pain. Only my inconvenience. Still I stayed. Because marriage meant fighting. Didn't it? Or at least, that's what I kept telling myself. Years passed. Our apartment became a beautiful townhouse. Ethan's career exploded. Mine quietly disappeared. Whenever promotions required relocating or longer hours, I sacrifice first. "I'll find another job. I'll wait until things settle. I'll support you." I said those words so often they became part of my identity. Support. Wait. Sacrifice. Eventually I stopped asking what I wanted. Everything revolved around Ethan. His meetings. His clients. His image. His ambitions. One evening I found an old photo from our honeymoon. We were standing barefoot on a beach. Laughing. Holding hands. I looked at the woman in that picture. She looked alive. Hopeful. I barely recognized her. Then one afternoon everything changed. Not because of Ethan. Because of Dr. Nathan Reed. He wasn't our usual fertility specialist. Our previous doctor had retired unexpectedly. Nathan reviewed every medical record from the past 12 years. Every blood test. Every scan. Every treatment. Nearly an hour passed without him speaking. Finally he removed his glasses. Mrs. Carter, his voice was careful. I believe everyone has been looking at the wrong person. I frowned. What do you mean? He turned one of Ethan's reports toward me. This result should never have been ignored. I looked closer. Numbers. Medical terminology. Nothing made sense. Nathan continued. Your husband has an untreated condition affecting fertility. I blinked. I'm sorry, the problem was never you. The room disappeared. For 12 years every insult. Every accusation. Every sleepless night. Every tear. Every family gathering. Every whispered comment. Every cruel joke. None of it had been my fault. I covered my mouth. I don't understand. Nathan sighed. I can't explain why previous physicians overlooked this. But medically speaking, he paused. You are capable of conceiving. I couldn't move. For the first time in 12 years hope returned. Not loudly. Quietly. Like sunlight entering a room that had been closed for years. Nathan continued speaking. There are treatment options. What about Ethan? He'll need to decide whether he wants treatment. I nodded slowly, but something inside me hesitated. Not because of the diagnosis. Because I suddenly realized if Ethan learned the truth, everything he had built his identity upon would collapse. That evening I drove home with trembling hands. I imagined telling him. Imagined us crying together. Imagined finally becoming partners again. Instead I found him laughing in the living room with his mother. Margaret looked up first. Good. She smiled. We were waiting. Something about her expression made my stomach tighten. Ethan stood. We've made a decision. I looked from one face to the other. What decision? He folded his arms. I think we've wasted enough years pretending. Pretending. The word echoed inside my head. Margaret placed a thick envelope onto the coffee table. Divorce papers. I stared at them, unable to breathe. Ethan spoke with shocking calmness. I deserve a family. So do I whispered. He shook his head. You'll never have one. My fingers tightened around my purse. If only he knew what I had learned less than 3 hours earlier. I almost told him. Almost. But before I could speak, Margaret interrupted. You should leave with dignity. Then she added quietly, it will save everyone embarrassment. I looked at Ethan. Waiting. Praying. For him to stop this. To defend me. To remember 12 years together. He didn't. Instead he simply said, please sign. I looked at the papers. Then back at the man I had once loved more than anyone in the world. Something inside me finally broke. Not my heart. My hope. Without another word I picked up the envelope. Turned toward the front door. And walked out of the house that had never truly been mine. For the first few days after the divorce, I existed more than I lived. I rented a small furnished apartment on the edge of the city. The walls were plain. The furniture was old. The silence was unbearable. For 12 years I had built my entire life around another person. Now every morning I woke up wondering who I was without him. Friends called. I ignored them. Family offered help. I thanked them and said I needed time. The only person I answered was Dr. Nathan Reed. He called 3 days after the divorce. I've been thinking about your case. So have I. I'd like to begin treatment as soon as you're ready. I looked around the empty apartment. I don't know if I'm ready for anything. You don't have to decide your whole future today, he said gently. Just decide about tomorrow. That single sentence stayed with me. The next morning, I walked into his clinic. The treatment wasn't magical. It wasn't instant. There were medications, lifestyle changes, minor surgery, Regular appointments. Hope mixed with fear. But unlike the previous 12 years, everything now had a reason. Nathan explained every test, every report, every improvement. He never rushed, never made promises he couldn't keep. For the first time, I felt like someone actually wanted me to understand my own body instead of simply enduring it. Months passed. I found another job. A small architectural design firm needed someone to manage client relations. The salary wasn't impressive. The people were. No one knew my past. No one looked at me with pity. Slowly I started smiling again. One Friday evening, after another successful treatment review, Nathan closed my file and smiled. I have good news. I held my breath. Everything looks excellent. Really? He nodded. If life surprises you in the coming months, he smiled warmly. Don't be surprised. I laughed. It felt strange. Natural. Real. That night I walked home beneath a sky full of stars. For the first time in years, the future no longer frightened me. 3 months later I bought a pregnancy test. Not because I expected anything. Because I had been feeling unusually tired. I almost didn't use it. After 12 years of disappointment, hope had become dangerous. Still I waited. 1 minute. 2. Then 2 pink lines. I stared. Blinking. Certain I was imagining them. I bought another test. Then another. All positive. The following morning Nathan confirmed it with a blood test. He smiled before saying a single word. Congratulations, Amelia. The room became blurry. You are pregnant. Tears rolled silently down my face. Not dramatic tears. Quiet ones. The kind that come after years of believing something beautiful would never happen. I placed both hands over my stomach. I thought this day would never come. Nathan's eyes softened. I know. The pregnancy wasn't ordinary. Because of everything my body had endured. Every week required careful monitoring. Nathan personally supervised every appointment. One afternoon he studied the ultrasound screen longer than usual. My heartbeat quickened. Is something wrong? He looked at me. No. He smiled. Quite the opposite. He turned the monitor. There are 2 heartbeats. I frowned. I'm sorry? He laughed. Congratulations again. He pointed gently. You're having twins. For several seconds I couldn't even breathe. Twins. After 12 empty years. Life had somehow decided to give me 2 miracles at once. I laughed until I cried. Then cried until I laughed again. Nathan handed me tissues. I've delivered thousands of babies. He smiled. I never get tired of moments like this. Neither did I. The pregnancy changed everything. Not only physically. Emotionally. Every kick reminded me that my future no longer belonged to my past. I painted a small nursery in soft cream colors. Built 2 cribs. Folded tiny clothes. Read parenting books late into the night. Some evenings I still cried. Not because I missed Ethan. Because I mourned the years I had lost believing lies about myself. One afternoon my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Hello? Amelia? I froze. It was Ethan. His voice sounded unfamiliar. Older. Less confident. I heard he hesitated. That you've been seeing another doctor. I remained silent. My mother says you're wasting money. I smiled sadly. Goodbye, Ethan. Wait. What? He struggled for words. I hope you're okay. For 12 years those were the words I had desperately wanted to hear. Now they meant nothing. I'm more than okay. I ended the call. He never phoned again. The twins arrived on a rainy October morning. A little girl. Then her brother. Emma. Oliver. Nathan placed Emma in my arms first. She opened one tiny eye before falling asleep against my chest. Moments later he carried Oliver over. He yawned loudly. The entire delivery room laughed. I looked at my children. My beautiful children. 12 years. Thousands of tears. Hundreds of prayers. Every painful moment suddenly led here. Nathan quietly stepped back, allowing us our first family moment. I'll give you a few minutes. Before leaving he paused beside the door. I'm very happy for you, Amelia. So am I. The next year became a blur of sleepless nights. Milk bottles. Lullabies. First smiles. Tiny fingers wrapping around mine. Messy kitchens. Laundry mountains. Perfect chaos. Every exhausting day somehow felt like a gift. At work I was promoted twice. The company expanded rapidly. Our founder retired unexpectedly. The board offered me a partnership. I accepted. Life moved forward faster than I ever imagined. Then almost exactly 2 years after my divorce, an elegant white envelope arrived. No return address. Inside was a wedding invitation. Ethan Carter and Sophia Mitchell request the honor of your presence. I stared at the card. For several long minutes. Emma crawled into my lap. Oliver followed. Nathan walked into the living room carrying grocery bags. You look like you've seen a ghost. I handed him the invitation. He read it quietly, then looked at me. How do you feel? I don't know. He nodded. You don't owe anyone your presence. I know. He placed the invitation on the table. So why are you thinking about going? I looked at my sleeping children, then back at him. Because for 12 years I whispered. I believed his version of me. Nathan listened without interrupting. I don't need revenge. I know. I don't need an apology. I know. But maybe I smiled softly. I need him to see the truth. Nathan walked over. Took Emma into his arms. Oliver immediately reached for him too. Watching the three of them together always filled me with peace. What if seeing the truth isn't really about him? I frowned. What do you mean? He smiled. What if it's about you finally seeing how far you've come? Those words settled deep inside me. Later that night I stood in the twins' room watching them sleep. Their tiny chests rose and fell together. 2 impossible miracles. 2 living answers to every insult I had ever endured. I picked up the invitation once more. This time I checked the RSVP card. Yes, I would attend. Not to prove Ethan wrong, but because I had spent too many years hiding from a life that was always waiting for me. I had nothing left to fear, and everything left to celebrate. The wedding was being held at the Grand Meridian Hotel, one of the most luxurious venues in the city. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling. Fresh white roses lined the entrance. A string quartet played softly as guests arrived. I stood outside for a moment, taking a slow breath. This was the same city where I had once walked out of my marriage carrying nothing but a suitcase. Today, I wasn't carrying pain. I was carrying my daughter. Nathan stood beside me, holding Oliver in his arms. He looked at me with quiet confidence. You don't have to prove anything today. I know. You've already won. I smiled. I finally believed that. Emma reached up and touched my cheek. Mama. I kissed her forehead. Ready? Nathan nodded. As long as you're ready. Together, we walked inside. The conversation in the ballroom continued for another few seconds before slowly fading. One guest noticed us. Then another. Within moments, dozens of faces turned toward the entrance. Some recognized me immediately. Others simply stared at the beautiful little twins laughing in our arms. I wasn't dressed to impress anyone. A simple emerald green gown flowed to the floor. No extravagant jewelry. No dramatic entrance. Just quiet confidence. And somehow that was enough. Across the room, Ethan stood near the altar speaking with several guests. He laughed at something one of them said. Then his eyes lifted. The smile disappeared from his face. His entire body froze. For a second, he looked as though he had forgotten how to breathe. His gaze moved from me to Emma to Oliver back to me again. His lips parted. Amelia, the word barely escaped him. Around him, conversations stopped completely. Even the musicians hesitated. Margaret slowly turned. The color drained from her face. She stared at the twins as if reality itself had betrayed her. No, she whispered. That's impossible. Nathan gently squeezed my hand. You don't have to say anything unless you want to. I nodded. But I already knew I would. Not out of anger. Out of truth. Ethan slowly walked toward us. Every step seemed heavier than the last. When he finally stopped in front of me, his eyes never left the children. His voice broke. Whose children are they? I answered calmly. Mine. He swallowed hard. And he looked toward Nathan. His. Nathan didn't speak. This wasn't his conversation. I looked directly into Ethan's eyes. They're mine. Silence. Guests exchanged confused glances. Margaret suddenly stepped forward. This is some kind of joke. I turned toward her. No. Her hands trembled. You couldn't. She stopped herself. I finished the sentence for her. I couldn't have children? She looked away. I reached into my handbag and removed a small envelope. Inside was a folded medical report. The same report Dr. Nathan Reed had shown me 2 years earlier. I handed it to Ethan. He unfolded it with shaking hands. His eyes scanned the page. Then another. Then the final paragraph. He read it twice. A third time. His shoulders slowly collapsed. What he whispered. What is this? The truth. His breathing became uneven. The infertility. I nodded. It was never mine. He stared at the report. Then at his mother. Then back at me. I didn't know. I know. Margaret suddenly interrupted. Those doctors were wrong. No. Irrepliably. They finally found the right answer. The ballroom remained completely silent. I continued. For 12 years, I believed I was broken. I looked at Ethan. You believed it too. He lowered his eyes. I was angry. You were cruel. You humiliated me in front of strangers. No one moved. No one spoke. I wasn't shouting. I didn't need to. The truth didn't require volume. It wasn't just the words. I continued softly. It was every moment you chose my pain over your pride. Tears filled Ethan's eyes. I never imagined. I know. He looked toward Emma. Then Oliver. They're beautiful. I smiled. They are. He whispered something so quietly I almost didn't hear it. I'm sorry. For years I had imagined that moment. Thought it would heal something inside me. It didn't. Because healing had already happened long before the apology arrived. I forgive you. His head lifted in surprise. But forgiveness doesn't change the past. He nodded slowly. I understand. No. I smiled gently. I don't think you do. I looked around the ballroom. Do you remember the restaurant? His face tightened. The day you called me empty? He closed his eyes. I remember. I believed you. The words echoed across the room. I spent years believing your version of me. I rested one hand gently on Emma's back. Until I discovered that my value had never depended on becoming a mother. I looked down at my children. And when I finally became one, I smiled. It wasn't because someone gave me permission. Nathan quietly stepped beside me. Without saying a word, Oliver reached both little arms toward him. Nathan laughed and lifted him onto his shoulder. The simple gesture said everything. Love wasn't always biological. Love was presence, patience, choice. Every single day. Sophia, the bride, had been standing silently near the altar throughout the conversation. Finally she stepped forward. She looked at Ethan. Then at me. Then at the twins. I didn't know. Her voice trembled. I swear I didn't. I believed her. None of this belonged to her. She hadn't lived our marriage. She hadn't spoken the words that broke it. I smiled kindly. You don't owe me an apology. She looked relieved. Margaret, however, looked anything but relieved. She suddenly grabbed Ethan's arm. We're getting married. Her voice sounded desperate. Don't let this ruin today. Ethan slowly looked at his mother. For the first time since I had known him, he gently pulled his arm away. No. She stared at him. What? I ruined today. His voice was quiet. Not her. Margaret opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Perhaps for the first time in her life, she had no one left to blame. Nathan looked at me. Ready to go home? I nodded. I had said everything that needed saying. As we turned toward the exit, Ethan spoke once more. Amelia. I looked back. If I had known he couldn't finish. I smiled sadly. But you didn't try to know. The words landed harder than anger ever could. Because they were true. I took Nathan's hand. Together we walked toward the doors. Emma laughed at something only she understood. Oliver clapped happily as the sunlight poured through the entrance. Behind us, no one tried to stop us. Outside, the afternoon air felt warm, peaceful. Nathan opened the car door before looking at me. How do you feel? I thought for a moment. Lighter. He smiled. I thought you might. As we drove away, I looked out the window. Not once did I look back at the hotel. Some chapters don't need to be reread. They simply need to be closed. 6 months later, Nathan and I were married in a quiet garden surrounded by the people who had stood beside us through every difficult season. There were no grand speeches. No extravagant decorations. Emma scattered flower petals with more enthusiasm than accuracy. Oliver proudly carried the rings before sitting down halfway through the aisle, because he became fascinated by a butterfly. Everyone laughed. During our vows, Nathan looked into my eyes. I don't love you because you survived difficult years. He smiled. I love you because those years never took away your kindness. I struggled to hold back tears. When it was my turn, I took both his hands. For a long time, I thought love meant proving my worth. I looked at him. You taught me that real love never asks someone to earn it. There wasn't a dry eye among our guests. Life settled into something wonderfully ordinary. Morning pancakes, school drop-offs, family movie nights, picnics in the park, messy living rooms, bedtime stories. The twins filled every room with laughter. Sometimes, late at night,